Do you feel like your son was failed by institutions involved?
Yes, more than failed. Not more so by our local government failed Ahmaud.
If it was now and you guys heard that a victim had gone to the bishop and said, this happened to me, and they told this person, it's a conjecture, nothing we can do, that person would be facing criminal charges.
They'd be facing an investigation to determine if criminal charges existed.
What do you know of him that makes you feel confident that he would do the right thing?
The way he is served and what I could gain in my discussions with him, the pastors that have served with him, the parishioners.
Okay, but it is important to point out that Republic had issues with the city way before the pandemic. Does it put pressure, or is it helpful that they're there if you have something left over?
It's real simple. If we've got it left over and it's in the syringe, we're not looking to throw anything away.
Do you feel like you have an obligation to the community, though, to let them know what the problem was? We're just wanting to know why you are not answering our questions.
What questions are you talking about?
Talking about the bus driver. Decades stand between then
I was 13 years old.
and now.
Older boy.
But even today, Paul Clark can still feel the trauma he says he experienced as a child.
In this car.
For him and many others,
like I said, it was terrible. You'd just go numb.
it's just as if it happened yesterday.
Still.
Investigators detail in this 2016 grand jury report how hundreds of young boys and girls were sexually abused by priests in the Altoona-Johnstown Diocese in Pennsylvania.
Like I said, it was a molester's heaven here.
Investigators say the crimes of predator priests were covered up for decades by church officials who kept meticulous secret record of it all.
You're the guiltiest person that did it.
It turns out one of the higher-up priests accused of helping to cover up abuse is now ministering right here in Santa Maria del Mar Catholic Church in Flagler Beach.
Had a lot of things that he hid. He didn't change overnight. He's in your diocese now, so I'd just beware.
The Pennsylvania Attorney General's investigation revealed Monsignor Michael Cervinsky was involved in numerous sex abuse investigations in the Altoona Diocese. In 2002, investigators say Cervinsky and another church leader interviewed an accused priest and listened as he admitted to molesting an 8-year-old girl. Investigators say neither Cervinsky or the other church leader called police.
And so he knew the problems of the diocese and helped him, whether it was his job or whatever, he helped cover it up.
When asked to testify about his role in the alleged scheme to cover up abuse, Monsignor Cervinsky pled the fifth. Ultimately, because of the short statute of limitations, prosecutors say they were unable to charge anyone, including Cervinsky, with any crime. Santa Maria del Mar is a smaller piece of the puzzle. The Diocese of St. Augustine, that covers more than 17 Florida counties, made the decision to let Monsignor Cervinsky work in their church. Deacon Williams vets priests coming in. Were you all aware of the report?
We were certainly aware of the Pennsylvania reports, the grand jury investigations, and all of that.
The grand jury report has stated that he failed to report sexual abuse. And you guys do have this policy that you expect people to report. Do you have confidence that he would do that?
Based on my knowledge of him, I have confidence in him.
What makes you say that? What do you know of him that makes you feel confident that he would do the right thing?
The way he is served and what I could gain in my discussions with him, the pastors that have served with him, the parishioners largely who have been there with him in the parish where he's involved, He's a very appreciated priest. For us to cast a shadow on him when the state of Pennsylvania, when his own diocese have said that there were nothing that they can do, essentially, we could have said no, but we had no reason to say no. That would have been based on anything except an opinion.
But it wasn't just an opinion. The 2016 grand jury's report was the result of a 2-year investigation and going through records the diocese kept of interviews, allegations, and confessions from accused abusers. At the end of the report, the Attorney General wrote, the grand jury finds the acts of predator priests and their enabling bishops to be criminal. However, they said they cannot be prosecuted at this time. The statute of limitations for many of the, quote, loathsome and criminal actions detailed in this report had expired.
It's very frustrating, the fact that, my molester didn't do 1 second of jail time, but I do a life sentence now. There's no accountability. They don't have to do anything for their actions. And he's not going to change.
He's older now, and I think he's thinking that he pleaded the fifth, so he doesn't have to answer to nobody. And I'm sure he'll live out his days with nothing happening to him.
Every year, Duval County collects tons of trash, and all of it gets thrown in one stinky pile at the landfill, about the closest to the county line as possible. Our tax dollars are supposed to make it so, like clockwork, once a week, a truck will scoop up our portion and wheel it away. But what if it just doesn't happen? As in, they never come and get the trash. Turns out, plenty, and I mean thousands of people in Jacksonville know the feeling. People like Mike Salenza.
I've actually made a run to the dump myself because I can't depend on them to pick up the trash. So what do I need them for? I'll take it myself. Just throw it in the pickup truck.
To the landfill?
To the landfill, yeah.
Over 45 minutes away?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There's also Evelyn's story.
They would come and get part of the street and not get the rest of the street.
And then there's Tracy, who says she once paid Republic drivers cash to get her yard waste removed after weeks of it being missed.
He said something like this, meaning they would like some money. And I said, oh, do you mean that the only way you're going to pick this up is if we give you something? And they said, yes, ma'am, if you want this all gone, yeah, that would be pretty helpful.
It's not just these 3 people. We pulled the number of complaints about trash collection from the city of Jacksonville. City records show since August of last year, close to 80,000 complaints came in about missed trash collection. 33,000 of those were complaints an entire street was missed.
This is truly not about you missing one person. This is about you missing the entire neighborhood.
That's Councilmember Joyce Morgan. She's been dealing with the brunt of this issue since she began as a council member years ago.
We're dealing with all of these shootings, all of the things that people are saying are bad about our neighborhood. The last thing that you want is trash sitting in front of your garage for days and days unchecked.
Of the more than 79,000 complaints across the city, nearly half involved Republic Services, which is responsible for different areas, including Morgan's district. One of the company's other areas is zip code 32218 on the north side. There were 10,000 complaints there alone. Last year, Republic had so many issues with not picking up trash in neighborhoods. The city sent them this letter telling Republic to fix the problems or the city would cut their contract. But Republic promised to clean up their act, and they did get a second chance. Fast forward a year and a pandemic later, and the city sent the company another letter threatening to end its contract. Because as it turns out, the trash complaints got worse. The company was charged over $163,000 in penalties. But months have gone by, and the city hasn't made good on either notice to terminate Republic's contracts. So why is this happening? Republic says, for one, more people are throwing things away. Republic also says sometimes customer reports get entered incorrectly. Republic sends a supervisor to the location and there's nothing to collect because they're at the wrong place. But Republic is still deemed in violation. The company also said it's because of the pandemic. 27 of their employees have been sidelined due to COVID during the time frame of the complaints.
Okay, but it is important to point out that Republic had issues with the city way before the pandemic. The first threat the city made to cancel its contract was in October 2019. That's months before the first case of COVID-19 was reported in the U.S., much less Florida. And it did come after a year filled with complaints about Republic. It's also important to point out that the other private companies the city contracts with, they get their complaints submitted to the city in the exact same way as Republic, didn't have nearly as many issues reported to the city. For example, Waste Pro, they had more than 22,000 complaints submitted to the city in the same time frame. Advanced Disposal, close to 10,000. But Republic, they had more complaints than both companies combined.
Jacksonville city leaders say the biggest problem for Republic Services may be the commute the trash haulers have to the city landfill. In an October letter to the city, Republic says in August, its trucks waited a total of 344 hours at the landfill compared to last August. That amounts to about 12,000 homes not having trash collected due to delays at the landfill. Republic Services told council members they're planning to create a transfer station, basically an in-between where haulers can drop trash and go back to their route. The city has also been contemplating a larger transfer station for all private trash companies.
How long could it take for Jacksonville to see this transfer station?
A minimum of 2 years.
So where does that leave thousands of people in Jacksonville who can't get their smelly trash picked up?
Men they were told to trust, but train them in a sacred space. Secret church files show top leaders of the Diocese of St. Augustine failed to tell police about allegations its priest molested Jacksonville children.
The church historically hid it.
The church only exposing most priests' crimes years after they died. But the whole truth still hasn't been told. The truth is hiding in secret files the diocese has kept for years. Records they exclusively had access to until court orders forced the diocese to hand them over to state investigators.
I wasn't giving the church a choice. They were going to provide me these records or I was going to go get them.
Now we're telling you the whole story, starting in 1980, when Reverend William Malone, a visiting priest from Ireland, was assigned to Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Jacksonville. In an internal report from 2019, church investigators detailed how Reverend Malone repeatedly molested a young girl during the sacrament of confession. The girl was only 11 years old. Diocese investigators said one of the times Father Malone touched her, he pointed and said, "Be good or the devil is going to get you." Records show more than 10 years later, the girl told her mother about the abuse.
When then we will have
Diocese records detail her parents met with then Bishop of the Diocese of St. Augustine, Bishop John Snyder, in 1991. But records show the church dismissed the allegations then as conjecture, saying the victim was unwilling to meet with the diocesan officials. But in January 1991, despite Bishop Snyder dismissing allegations Malone molested an 11-year-old girl and not reporting the allegations to police, he transferred Malone to a different church within the diocese.
St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Church in Palm Coast, Florida.
The next year, the diocese transferred him to a parish in Long Island, and eventually, he went back to the diocese in Ireland. In a letter from August 1993 to Bishop Snyder, church leaders in Ireland wrote that while Reverend Malone couldn't remember abusing children, he accepted something happened. The admission by Father Malone is not the only bombshell in the letter. The letter itself was to discuss child support payments. To a young parishioner, Father Malone got pregnant in the late 1980s while an assistant pastor at Sacred Heart. Records on Sacred Heart letterhead show the payments split between the diocese and the Holy Ghost Fathers Order of Long Island. The payments to Father Malone's child began in January 1992 and continued until 2010. Despite what church leaders knew, allegations against Father Malone were not reported to law enforcement. That 11-year-old victim, now an adult, came forward again in 2003. She wrote a letter telling the new bishop, Victor Gallione, she was hurt, not just once, but twice by the way it was handled. The diocese's own records show the victim met with Bishop Victor Gallione in 2003, but that the Diocesan Review Board was never called to investigate the allegations. And again, neither were police. It was not until 2018, the third time she spoke up, 27 years after her parents told Bishop Snyder, that the diocese reported the allegations to police and its own parishioners. But the diocese did not tell parishioners that they were told about the allegations against Father Malone decades ago, or that they for years paid child support to a child he fathered while a priest at Sacred Heart. Diocese records also showed other victims had come forward over the years with stories of how Father Malone molested them. In 1994, a woman's husband reported she was molested by Father Malone during counseling sessions with the priest in 1982. She was 15 at the time. Police reports say she was molested once a week for 6 weeks by Father Malone. The church, again, did not report the allegations. That woman didn't come forward again until 2019. The same year, a third victim came forward, telling the diocese she was molested in 1981 at Sacred Heart Catholic Church by Father Malone. We wanted to hear the church's explanation for how these cases were handled, but church officials at the Diocese of St. Augustine refused to sit down with our team to talk about the records. The prosecutor who led the Florida Attorney General's investigation into historical sex abuse in the Florida churches did.
So if it was now and you guys heard that a victim had gone to the bishop and said, this happened to me, and they told this person, it's a conjecture, nothing we can do, that person would be facing criminal charges.
They'd be facing an investigation to determine if criminal charges existed, whether it be for interfering with an investigation, whether it be for either witness tampering, evidence, manipulating evidence, whether it be for failure to report. There's a number of things that could apply in these types of cases. But we're talking about crimes here that need to be reported to law enforcement. And that was another problem with the church. They weren't doing it.
A lot of the times it looks like they're conducting their own investigation before they even take it to police.
Are you speaking about now or before?
Or just what some of these records lay out, that they were doing their own investigation and then possibly take it to police. Is that problematic?
Yes, it is. And that's one of the things I tried to communicate to the church and that I would recommend to them that they need to do. They have their own, what they call diocesan review boards, that when there's a complaint, these diocesan review boards will look at, and it's members of the diocese, whether it's church members, whether it's former police officers, even former prosecutors in some cases sit on these boards. And they will look at them and they will investigate and they will recommend to the bishop what the bishop should do in regards to that person. The problem is diocesan review boards don't have any criminal powers. Law enforcement has criminal powers. So the diocesan review boards, and I've tried to make this clear, they don't need to be investigating this and then deciding if it goes to law enforcement. The minute the allegation is made, they need to notify law enforcement and make sure law enforcement doesn't mind them taking a look. The church is incapable of policing itself. The church should not be relying on the church or diocesan review boards to police whether or not crimes are being committed against children or anything else. That is for law enforcement to do.
In November, the Office of Statewide Prosecutors released the findings of its 2-year investigation into every Catholic diocese in Florida. In the report, investigators say they received no tip about current conduct inside the church or of children in imminent danger. But in total, the report listed 97 priests credibly accused of sexual abuse in Florida churches. including Reverend William Malone. But what the report did not detail was any of the abuse experienced by Jacksonville children or the cover-up by the Diocese of St. Augustine leaders. What happened to the victims of Father Malone is a snapshot of the history of the Diocese of St. Augustine and how they handled allegations of sex abuse against his priest. And it's an even smaller look at Catholics say possibly the biggest issue facing leaders of Florida's Catholic churches, even now, is openness. In that letter to Bishop Gallione in 2003, the 11-year-old who Father Malone first abused shared how the abuse and the cover-up left her faith. She wrote, "I was abused by a man of God and ignored by men of God who were supposed to protect their flock."